Okay, and I had also put in the link for our shared Google Doc. So there's a doc you can, for an agenda, making any notes, and I just put that link in there. So anyway, I thought I can start, and I'll actually have a timer here to keep a little bit of track of time. Last time we ended up having kind of just ongoing discussion, so I was going to try to be a little bit more, holding a bit more to the time. So I'll just mention that. So anyway, just to kind of report on the last week, a few things I was doing on empathy work was I had contacted Helen Reese, who has a company called Ethics. Okay, it's a really hard name to pronounce, but she's at Harvard and has a program there on relationship and empathy center, and she's in the medical field, MD at Massachusetts General, as well as has done a lot of work on empathy, and she took her work and turned it into a training program, and has I was talking with her, and she gave me permissions to watch her training. So it's like a 3-hour multimedia training online geared towards the medical doctors on how to be more empathic. So I was just watching that. So went through that, kind of made a few notes about that. There's a process called human-centered design, which I think is doing kind of the most to really get the importance of empathy out into society and among a really influential community, and coming from the design community. And there's a workshop, a day-long workshop that was put together by IDEO, which is kind of a leader in this. And I'm doing that workshop online, so it's like an 8-hour, 2-day training. And so I set up a workshop for it, and we're going to be going through the design process, and our design challenge is how do we train people in empathy. So I'm going to be using the method to design training for empathy. And also, Grudy interviewed me last week, which was kind of fun. We put that up online, and Sasha and Lou and I had the empathy training meeting, not training, but creating lessons last week. And what really came up was this whole discussion about really needing to get to the foundational concepts or premises that we're operating from. And I had mentioned that that's for Dorothy. Her work came in real handy in terms of the concept of transformational empathy and transformative empathy, and I'm really wanting to do it, the training around transformative empathy. So we're looking forward to talking about that. Also talked with Krista Tinari, who has been doing training, empathy training, and she has a workshop, Empathy, a Powerful Antidote to Exclusion, Intolerance, and Bullying. So she's going to join the literature review team in April. She's kind of tied up this month, so that'll be really great. And I talked to Robert Elliott, who's at Glasgow University there at the Strathclyde, I can't even pronounce the university, but he's been in the person-centered approach for, started in that approach, which I know Gertie is involved in, and he's actually working on a curriculum on empathy as well. So I was going to trying to line up an interview with him. And one of the papers that I want to talk about is by Virginia, I think it's Virginia Dexter, and I contacted her about having her maybe even come to this group and just talk about her paper, and she didn't seem interested, so I'm not quite sure why. So I was a little disappointed about that. So that's my report, and so I'll pass it on to whoever wants to go next.
I guess I have a couple of questions that I'm sure you've already clarified, but since this is my first time, I wanted to ask about the literature. Do people mostly contribute their own work or upload works from other thinkers?
It was going to be, we're bringing any papers, studies that we find to upload. So it can be your own or anyone else's. So the idea is to bring together all the papers on empathy training. And what we're looking at here is to do about a 2-minute intro for everyone. Just, what would you like to report on, or kind of add about yourself, and then we'll jump into sharing the papers and do maybe a 5 or 10 minute, each person going around sharing a paper that they uploaded or excited about.
Okay. And when you upload a paper, do you just use the citation or the abstract or the whole paper? Because I imagine there's copyright issues.
Did you see the site, how we did the papers?
Yeah, I've seen only abstract, so I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, we have like a little template that we're using.
Yes.
Where we have, like an abstract, topic area, definitions that they use, maybe any benefits or methods, target group. So a little bit of categorizing it. So you can. I don't think you've seen yet how to. I don't know if you've used the Google Sites yet, but I can give you a little tour of how to create a web page. You copy the template onto the web page, and then just basically fill it out for that paper.
Okay.
And then just save it, and it's once you get. I don't know if you've used Google Sites, but it's fairly easy.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen the template. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And this is kind of a prototype, so we're testing it, so we'll see how this works. I know Melissa, who's been, is the other person, she and I started this. She's working on her PhD on empathy training, actually. She's the one in Holland, and she likes the database approach, but we're kind of looking at what final platform to use for this, but this is just our prototype to get the ball rolling.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody want to share, or just kind of get your little introduction about yourself, 2 minutes, or?
Okay, I'll jump in. Let's see. I started working on the concept of empathy probably like in 1997. My first publication on it was in 1999, and it's kind of threaded through all my work in between. I did a lot of work on the transformative mediation model, and they call it recognition because every scholar seems to have to create their own word for something. Really, but it's empathy. I did a lot of work around that on empathy, and then I hit a point where I began to feel very restricted by the model. There were more things I wanted to think about, more things I wanted to do. I was interested in a lot of social issues, and continue to be, and really wanted to think more about how empathy played into those. And then in that process, of course, I've continued to write, but not always specifically on empathy. But then I started teaching. And then, let's see, well, I teach in a communication department, and I was 6 years at a face-to-face university, but after that, I went online. And now I teach at Walden, and I designed and teach the course on communication and social change. And that's where empathy comes up a lot when we're talking about, especially I teach action research, I teach dialogic methods for research, I teach dialogic approaches to social change. And it just has this overall feeling that I've come home. And I'm doing what I need to be doing and asking the questions I need to ask. And so a lot of that has informed my personal website, which is communicatingacrossdifferences.com. And it seems like anytime you approach that subject, you end up approaching empathy. But it's also interesting because there is this little element of empathy and then what? There's still that, okay, empathy is a good thing, but you also, there's some step of you need to do something, especially if you're talking about things like social change. Empathy is where you begin, empathy informs everything you do, but yeah, there's other things. So I'm trying to figure out at the moment what that is. So for example, sorry to bring politics into it, but if I look at Donald Trump and what Donald Trump is doing to people and to the public discourse and to political discourse and to minorities and all that, I think, all right, how do I deal with Donald Trump? This actually came to mind as I went to vote a few weeks ago, and I had to walk past a table of Trump materials and Trump people, and I felt a physical reaction. And I felt, how do I deal with empathy with Donald Trump and his followers? And I can tell you I'm still struggling with that one. It's like, maybe I can understand how people got there. Maybe I can understand the difficulties in life that maybe took them to where they have these points of view that I find, at least for some of them, I can't speak for all of his supporters, but, horrendous. And then I think to myself, it's like, okay, then, I can understand that, but what do you do next? How do you have a dialogue? How do you have a conversation? So that's kind of where I am now. How would I have a conversation with the Trump supporters I ran into when I went on my way to vote that wouldn't be adversarial and wouldn't be, at the same time, giving up who I am? And it's an interesting question. So anyway, my big picture thing is communication and social change, and empathy is all big part of that. And in the process of all this, I saw that I had made a reference to a website, Edwin's website, when I did a blog post. And when I did that, I went to Edwin's website and then saw this message of, hey, I'm doing this project. And I was like, this is perfect. So I sent Edwin a message saying, hey, can I join? At the same time, Edwin had sent me a message saying, hey, can you join?
Hey. Wow.
But his message went to my spam folder. So anyway, karma. I was meant to be here.
Oh, yes, karma. Glad you made it despite the spam folder incident.
So would you spell the URL out here? Because I was trying to find it, and I must have
on my website. Let's see, how do I put something in group chat? There it is.
Well, at the same time, I guess I can go. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'll look up to it.
Okay.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Xuan. I'm a PhD student at Brown University. I'm a 5th year already, but I will be staying for another year because I don't feel ready to leave yet. I study social psychology, and my research is about perspective taking, and I found empathy. Well, it's visual and social perspective taking, not emotional yet. But I found empathy when I was thinking more and more about perspective taking and how that is connected with various things and psychological processes and the benefits. And then I just noticed how strong the relation is between my research and empathy. So I taught a course on empathy last summer at Brown Leadership Institute. It's a course about empathy and leadership at Brown University. So the class, the students were all high schoolers from all over the world, and they loved it, and also really enjoyed teaching it, and found more, I guess, more meaning in it than what I've been doing before. Like I have worked with several nonprofits, and I also have my own kind of nonprofit, not kind of for-profit, for non-profit, social enterprise startup. So I was trying to connect what I care about with what I do in research, and I think empathy is a perfect combination. So I'm just starting this whole voyage, and hopefully it will get somewhere wonderful. I hope to find something that can help people to overall live a better life. That's what I started when I wanted when I started learning psychology and social psychology. So I will do a postdoc somewhere. Hopefully, I guess I don't want to say that the dream too loud, but too loudly. But I will postdoc and then start a tenure track position somewhere. That's my plan.
An early adopter. It's a very hopeful thing.
Like to do a little intro, Gertie?
Yeah. I am a psychotherapist, and I have studied a number of different directions or schools of thought that deal with empathy. I was trained as a psychoanalyst, and I specialized in self-psychology, which is the Kohutian school of thought. Heinz Kohut was a psychoanalyst last century in the mid in the 60s and 70s, and who first introduced the concept of empathy to the psychoanalytic community, parallel to Carl Rogers, who kind of did his own thing and founded his own person-centered approach, which is what I'm focusing now on the Rogerian philosophy that tries to combine empathy with authenticity, um, or congruence, as he called it, to constantly oscillate between empathy as a tool or a means to soften conflict, to create compassion, but at the same time to stay congruent or authentic to one's own needs or feelings. And two of my colleagues and I taught a class about Rogerian, the empathic concept of Rogerian thought at Columbia. Beyond Kohut and Rogers, I trained in the Emaco relationship. Emaco relationship therapy, which is basically a modality to work with couples. When couples come in and they present conflicts, one basically teaches the couple how to enter a dialogue where both people mirror each other or reflect back to each other what they hear each other say, and it's a very refined and in-depth dialogue, so people can really get where the other person is coming from. It's a very slow mode of talking, and that's what really makes the connection possible. And I did study a little bit of focusing. I know that Ed has interviewed Anne Weiser-Cornell in the past. That's Eugene Genlin's philosophy. And I did a long stint in Zen meditation. So I did a lot of reading around compassion and Buddhist thought. So all of that is all of it has to do with empathy. And all says the same thing. As you said, Dorothy, it's, empathy is empathy, and some people add a new perspective or give it a different name, but it's always empathy at the end of the day. And I spoke to a woman last week. I interviewed Ed, which was really fun. And then I spoke to a woman in California, Helen Wang, at the UC San Francisco. She did a study about how loving kindness meditation increases the capacity of the person to feel compassion for each other. And they did like a whole scientific thing, and that would be a good thing to upload once I figure out how to do that. And that's it.
Okay, thanks.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Edwin shared the link to your workshop last time we met. It looked awesome, and I just wonder who came to the workshops, like who were the participants, and what did they take away with them? I'm super curious about the workshop.
Yeah, it was a workshop for the Columbia School of Social Work.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of social workers, meaning they work in hospitals or the school system or agencies. Some psychotherapists who work in private practice, but mainly people who work in the public sector in social work. And we did a lot of really just teaching empathic relating, which was very new for many people because they're so used to just advice giving. Somebody presents a problem and they're like, oh, okay, this is what you have to do. And that's not empathy. So there was a big piece about the difference between sympathy and empathy and empathic reflecting and technique, so to speak. And a lot of group work. Much of it was experiential, that people just sat in triads and felt and practiced empathy. That was the biggest part of it.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And how about maybe you could give a short overview of your workshop, Sean, because yours is like a week long. Was that with the students?
That was 2 every day, 4.5 hours. So it was a course, more than a workshop, I guess, but we had multiple workshops on different aspects. My course was mostly on empathy and leadership. So basically, how we so first of all, why empathy is important and what empathy is after all, and then different lectures on the psychological components of empathy, the affective, the cognitive one, how we understand other people and how we end up misunderstanding other people, egocentric bias and stuff. So it's all based in social psychology and social neuroscience. And after all, this is a summer course at Brown, so we have to be academic to some extent to give the high schoolers a flavor of college education here. And after that, we talked about how empathy is related to a bigger picture, like morality issues, stereotype, and social justice. And that's pretty much the academic part. And in parallel, we have like a scaffolding of an individual action plan. So everyone has to come up with a plan of some kind of activity, campaign, or student organization, etc. they want to organize back home. So bring something they learned back to their community. That's the idea of the action plan. So I help the students, and my TA help the students develop their plan, and then have them pitch to each other, and then try to incorporate empathy in the action, like either understanding the target group they want to help, or just, I guess, being more understanding overall. So on the last day, students presented their action plan to students in other classes, and then it was the closing ceremony. So basically, that's it.
Mm-hmm. And you also had like not art activities, but like improv activities and so forth.
Yeah, I do. So I'm not trained in theater, but or improv, but I happen to have taken a few courses and find how important empathy is, and just how acting and improv is in understanding another person's feelings and thoughts. Like, I think acting is all about perspective taking. It's walking another person's shoes in a mile or 1,000 miles, in the actor's case. Well, I have incorporated empathy in my class, my own teaching. And when I was at Stanford Business School, I TA'd a class on acting with power. So it's basically teaching MBA students acting and help them. Well, for that, it's more about capturing the subtle social dynamic when they interact with other people. But I think it also has something to do with empathy too. And I also facilitate empathy workshops. One of those is for medical school students, first-year math students, to just use improv to kind of bond, connect, not specifically on empathy, but it's also using improv to help with social relationship, that kind of thing. That's something I practice, although not a professional.
Okay, thanks. So this is the part I'm not quite sure what we haven't really gotten into the papers yet. So the idea was 5 or 10 minutes per paper that we uploaded. It might turn out that we need more for that. Does anyone have any thoughts about that? Like the best approach to share the papers? Like the one I was going to do was Dexter 2012, and that's the link to it here. And I was imagining just going through reading the outline that I put together, and maybe we can talk a little bit about it. Does that seem to work as a methodology? Then, and then after about, we'll see, 5-10 minutes. I'm not sure how long it will take. Then we'll just keep going around for the time allotted to us. So. So anyway, then I'll jump into it. Was there any comments, or it looked like I was getting nods? That sounded good.
I was just something irrelevant. I need to get my charger, but I'll be hearing you. I can hear you, so you can just start. Sorry.
Okay, great. So the paper I was most excited about was these meta reviews. Since we're gathering papers and studies about training empathy, I found so far I found 3 meta reviews, so they've kind of like done all the work for us already. And Victoria Dexter, she wrote this paper, Research Synthesis with Meta-Analysis of Empathy Training Studies in Helping Professions. So this was from 2012, and it was her dissertation that she wrote at New York University. And so she says here, this was let's see, research synthesis and meta-analysis were implemented to determine if training can increase empathy in the helping professions and to identify variables that influence outcome. So she had something like, I believe, over 90 studies that she put together. Had gathered and actually did analysis of about 80 of the studies. And on that page that I put in there, you can go through, and there's the reference list. So there's each one is highlighted, the one that she incorporated. So in a sense, she's done a huge amount of work already. It seems that kind of jumping into these meta-analysis is a good way to kind of get an overview of the overall picture of the different papers. Yeah, so she did 80 of 94 studies, and the topic area was helping professionals or social work. So that's similar, Gertie, to what you're talking about. Then I looked into like definitions. How is empathy defined? And she broke it down into 10 different concepts of empathy, and she broke it down to accurate empathy, effective sensitivity, empathic communication, empathic understanding, empathic response, multidimensional empathy, perspective taking, predictive empathy, role taking, and vicarious emotional response. And under each of these, she has her references. So it's actually going to take those sections and put them into the definitions. There's a column. I wonder if I could share this on the screen here. So just a second. Let me do a bit of a screen share here. So I'm here at the definitions, and each of these, I haven't done it yet. I don't know how well you can see these, but like accurate empathy, I can we can cross-link that to the not measurements, but definitions. Haven't even added that yet. So each category will have its own heading. And I was thinking of just taking that blurb. She wrote a paragraph or so on each of those definitions, and that can be put into, into kind of fleshing out these various definitions or components of empathy. So haven't done that yet. But let's see, where are we at, Dexter? So let's see, yeah, so she's got those 10. I didn't see any benefits yet, or the methods. It was really it's quite an overview of the methods and the target group. I thought I updated that, was training professionals. She looked in measurements. She had 29 different, they had 15 different scales, so measurements. So I haven't put that in yet, but the measurements, we've got a section here on measurements, all the different measurements that let's see, that let me just had that timer go off. That was 5 minutes. So each measurement gets its own page, and then I can kind of cross-reference. And I just added another one today. It was this one here, CEPS. That was from Robert Elliott, who I mentioned earlier. This is like a new measurement. So anyway, that's not part of this study, but it was just the various measurements that we've got. And going down, results. Basically, the result is, from all that, is the study provides evidence that didactic and experiential training can increase empathy for social work students. So it all kind of boils down to yes. And I did check with her, as I mentioned. I was a little surprised that she didn't want to, follow up. Usually, I see somebody working on the theme of empathy, I reach out, contact them, either do a little interview or just make a connection. And she didn't seem to be very interested in that. But she was working at some organization called Safe Horizons, and it deals with it's the Center for Traumatic Stress. The Safe Horizons, yeah, for dealing with stress. So she's working at this institution, this organization that fosters, deals with child stress and trauma and so forth. So anyway, all the references are here, and the ones that are highlighted, have the little asterisk, are the studies that she actually used. Let's see, all right. These are the studies that she incorporated. So in a sense, to add to our study here, we can just go through and systematically add all these studies to the list. And, she's kind of done a lot of the research already. And she goes into like her research methodologies, all the databases she studied and she searched. So she kind of just goes through the whole process, and it's more of a narrative study. So she's like, it's relatively easy to read, and so I thought it might even be something that we could all read it and then maybe even have a discussion about it at some point, to maybe take the meta reviews, and if we all read them, it might give us some framework for how to do our own meta review. So yeah, so that's that study. Maybe just open it for a little discussion or comments, thoughts.
What is she doing right now after graduation?
She works at that organization, the one I just mentioned. She's
yeah, I saw the funding from 2012 to 2016, so that's the organization she's working in now.
Yeah, it's the Safe Horizons, safehorizons.org is the organization. So she's has a job there as I can't remember the exact position, but you know she's seems to be a larger organization dealing with child abuse, and I'm not quite sure what her position is there. I don't recall right off the bat. So any thoughts about that study? Or
Yeah, I had one thought came to me as I was listening to you and looking at the constructs. Is when you eventually develop, you know, a training program that comes out of all this research, one of the things we might want to think about as you're developing your training objectives and developing all, you know, your different activities, you could have a table with all the different constructs of what empathy is, and then check off for each activity. Okay, this activity hits this construct, and this activity hits this construct and this construct, and then that'll give you a sense of, yeah, we've covered everything. Just one thought came to mind.
yeah, so kind of because they're all talking about it's like I've heard the term, you know, that empathy is more like an umbrella, right, term.
Yeah.
So there's all these different components within it, and what are we talking about? It's like I never know what people are talking about, like specifically when they talk about empathy. So somehow to have that overview. There was another thing I wanted to show. This is a little. I'm going to share this. This is going to be probably hard to see. That something I've just been experimenting with is this is in a program called Mural, which yeah, I can't seem to zoom in too much more here. Oh well. It is so trying to create create kind of graphs like you're talking about, right? How can we model this in a pictorial way? So I've got here like this ethics of authority, ethics of justice, and ethics of empathy. And so there's different, and the ethics of justice, I would say, is sort of like a transactional empathy. I mean, I can invite you to this at a different, send you a link. So we have the ethics of authority, which is maybe a bit like Trump, you know, the authoritarian approach, you know, do what I say, shut up. Or the ethics of justice, which is, you know, there's judgment, there's certain premises, you know, to that worldview. It's the worldview that everybody's, you know, the world is selfish, it's all about self-interest, versus an ethics of empathy, which would be transformational and like an empathic way of being, which is seeing that we're in relationship, and these are the basic premises. And so I was kind of trying to create a chart to kind of map these over, so that's something would be, and yeah, so it's kind of talking about transactional empathy and the transformative empathy, but also the work of Lori Gruen, who has the book Entangled Empathy, where she talks about an ethics of justice and the foundations of it. That's our current justice system. Oh, great, Sasha! Yay!
Yay!
We're not hearing you. You might be muted, or.
Okay, now?
There you go. Yep, now I hear you.
Hello, I'm sorry for butting in so late, but I'm a victim of early springtime in the United States.
As usual, the United States is going their own way.
Yes, 2 hours earlier than Europe, but we will catch up in 2 weeks, and I hope I didn't miss anything, and I hope I didn't interrupt anything now.
Now we're just we got around done introductions. We did like 2-minute introductions. Maybe we could go around and just do a quick introduction if you'd like to maybe share, Sasha.
Oh, introduce me, or I didn't catch that.
Yeah, just introduce yourself. What have you been doing in the field of empathy and.
Yes, gladly. Well, I'm for the past 10 years I've been working as trainer and coach, and a lot of what I've been teaching people in my seminars was centered around empathy. Though in the beginning, 10 years ago, I might not have called it by that name, but over course and time, I came to understand that for communication trainings, really. Honing people's or raising awareness for empathy is really the key for good communication, and basically the key for an appreciative way of cooperating, of working together. And so about a year ago, about 3 years ago, we teamed up with 6, 7 other colleagues, and we're working together in the Academy for Empathy here in Berlin, Germany. And about a year ago, I decided to do a PhD thesis on the topic empathy and leadership training, leadership culture. So right now I'm researching into empathy, getting to know all the biological, psychological, and sociological findings about empathy, and getting into the training literature on empathy. And then in a later step, I will figure out how I can contribute to that by my own research, however limited that is, as I'm self-funded and not funded. I'm not affiliated to any kind of university.
And last time you also announced that you got a book deal to turn your dissertation into a book, and you couldn't sleep for a couple of days.
Well, yeah. Well, that's a bit sneaky in a way that I kind of went around the normal market forces, because one of my very good customers for whom I've been doing training for the last, I don't know, 9 years is the Springer Nature, Springer Macmillan now, and so one of my clients at Springer got me in touch with a senior editor from the organizational psychology series, and he thinks that empathy and empathy at the workplace is a very good topic, and so I might start a book project. I haven't signed a contract yet, but I got very excited about this prospect of writing a book about that and bringing some of the ideas about the goodness of empathy, contributing to bringing that into the world.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Should we do a quick round just so I think you haven't all met. Maybe Dorothy, if you just share a little bit again.
Hi, Sasha. It's nice to meet you. I'm Dorothy.
Hello, Dorothy.
I'm actually German by birth. I was born in Oldenburg. And
in Oldenburg. Okay.
My birth mother still lives in Bremerhaven.
In Bremerhaven.
Yeah, but I've not been to Berlin yet. But anyway, let's see. I'll just give you a quick thumbnail. I'm interested in empathy as a writer, a scholar, trainer, teacher, and my overarching thing is I'm interested in communicating for social change, communicating across differences, communication and social justice, those sorts of things, and of course empathy runs through all of them. So that's probably enough for now.
That was very short, but I hope I get to know you much better in the course of our working together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Gertie?
That's so funny. I'm German too. I live in New York, in New York City, or in the area of New York City now. I work as a psychotherapist, and I came as a journalist covering American politics for German media, and then did a complete turnaround and turned into a psychoanalyst. And I've done a lot of reading and dealing and teaching around the works of Carl Rogers, Heinz Kohut, Harl Hendricks, and the Imago therapy, and Eugene Gendlin, who does focusing. And I've done a lot of Buddhist studies as well, so all kinds of different.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And you are now stationed in the United States, or?
Yeah, I live in New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No more journalism. Those days are over. That's when I interview Ed. It's a nice reference to my previous days of interviewing people. It was fun.
Fascinating. Thank you very much.
I'm muted.
Schuan, are you also German, Schuan?
Germany twice, and that's the only European country I've been to so far.
So you'd met before, Schwan? I don't know if you'd
already... Yes.
Okay, you're... So I just want to say that since we're talking about German, this is my German passport.
Oh my God!
So there it is, officially Bundesrepublik Deutschland, Europäische Union, Reisepass. So.
What does that mean? Maybe that Germans need to learn more about empathy.
Maybe.
Or it's in our blood.
Or that. That's so funny.
That is funny.
We don't want you to feel excluded, Juan. I don't think you went, though. Sasha, did Juan introduce herself to you? I don't think she did.
No, we had the pleasure, was it 2 or 3 times, Juan?
Hmm?
How many times were we in a call together now? 2 or 3 times?
3 times at least, I think.
Sorry, 2 times or?
At least 3 times, I think.
Yes. I seem to remember as well. Yeah.
Okay, so we're starting to go around sharing the papers that we added, and I was just sharing mine had just completed. So we're ready for anyone else that wants to jump in and share a paper that they added.
I'll go.
Okay.
You were talking about a meta review, and just in case we don't have time to get back to this today, it's not what I want to talk about right now, but I posted from Tading von Berkhout, and it was a 2016 meta-analysis. It looks like you're putting a little asterisk near meta-analysis, so I'll make sure I go back in and do that.
What was the name of it?
Tading von Berkhout. I put it under T.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So just to flag that in case we don't get to it today. The one that I'd like to talk about first is lens. Where is that? Let's see. I'm finding it here. Although I don't know how to do a screen share, but I'll just talk about what a few things I wanted to highlight from it.
I can screen share it if you'd like.
Okay.
Well, I have it on a split screen anyway. For me, you don't have to share. I don't know about you guys.
I can see it on a different screen, but I know it's not what you all are seeing. But it's really not necessary that anybody look at it because I can talk through the main things, so that's okay. Lens was it's a 2013 article from the Journal of Humanistic Counseling. It was by Stephen Lenz and Varuni. No, I'm not going to say this right. Saganjanovic, I think. Anyway, it's called Evidence for the Utility of a Photo Voice Task as an Empathic Skill Acquisition Strategy Among Counselors in Training. And I was really fascinated by this one because it put a new task in there for how to learn empathy that I had not seen before. I don't know if anybody else, let me flip back for a moment. Has anybody else heard of photo voice? Have you done that?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay. Like I said, I was fascinated by it, and I think I'm going to do more research on it to understand it better. But anyway, what they did was they compared this photo voice technique, which I'll talk about more in a moment, with a didactic approach for teaching empathic skills to 38 master's level counselors in training. The photo voice students demonstrated marked improvement in the quality of their empathic statements compared to those receiving didactic lecture. So it looks like a promising thing. It was the definition of empathy they used here was empathic responding. That's what they were measuring to tie into what Edwin was talking about earlier. Excuse me. Let's see. Let me talk about the methods, just because photo voice seems to be new to all of us. It calls photo voice a method of participatory pedagogy involving the use of photographs to evaluate social and cultural phenomena associated with diverse populations by someone outside the community that's depicted. In these activities, the participants are encouraged to critically examine photos of situations in communities that are different from their own, and to explain their perceptions of the situation that represent a changed perspective. So that was very interesting to me. And they call it also participatory visual analysis. It gives an opportunity to evaluate the world of diverse populations by having the participants select photographs that have already been taken and narrate their subjective response to those images. As an aside, there was another way to do this photo voice activity, which was taking your own photos and talking about them. But this participatory visual analysis approach is the photos are there, and you select, and then you narrate your response to the images. Let's see, the rest of this is about the study design, which is... Sorry, it's of less interest to me than this whole photo voice thing, so that's what I'm going to talk about. In the article, if you were to look at the original article, and I can always copy it in if I need to. For some reason, I thought I had, but I did not. Anyway, there was a really good discussion about the value of experiential and multisensory learning, and there was also instructions for how to carry out a photo voice task. Instructions for what kind of photos to take, how to do a photo array and have people in the training select photos, how to do a guided discussion of the photos. If I remember correctly, there were things like, what do you identify with in this photo and what do you not identify with in this photo, and then leading into discussions of empathy around the photo. So anyway, I thought that was a fascinating way of doing a training, so that was why I wanted to bring it into the discussion.
So is it photo voice is you see the photograph and then you role play it, or you discuss what it is that you're seeing?
It sounded like it was a narrative discussion, and like I said, it was a guided discussion. If you can just hang on a second, I'll pull up the article, and I'll tell you the guided questions that they use. Come on, Adobe, you can do it.
Sorry, everyone. I might have to go now because I have a meeting starting right now. But this is very, very helpful, and I will just, I guess I'll just paste my my article on the website instead, and email you guys the link. Right, so have a good day, afternoon, morning.
Thank you, Joanne. Bye-bye.
It was nice talking with you.
Talking to you.
Okay, here are some of the questions they use in Discover Your Photo, it's called. What is the name or label given to the group that you would or would not like to spend a week with? That was the initial question they said. They said, pick from these photos one group that you would like to spend a week with, and another photo of a group that you would not like to spend a week with. So then, the first question then is, okay, you have your two photos. What is the name or label that you would give to the group? What might an individual from this group's best hopes be? What might be the individual's biggest fear or worry? What do you think is this group's most prized value or attribute? What may an individual from this group want for a gift? What would an individual from this group give for a gift? What is the concern that an individual from this group might present during a counseling session? And what is an empathic statement that you could make to them? So to me, they were sort of all new questions, an all new way of looking at how to train empathy. I mean, I'm very familiar with adaptive approaches and very familiar with, I think, a pretty good range of experiential approaches, but that one was new to me.
So it's basically developing a better theory of mind, better cognitive empathy, so to speak.
They talked about it as their goal was doing empathic responses, but I agree with you. I mean, they were stepping into someone else's world. I thought of it more as cognitive empathy, but I guess they were saying, since the last question was, what is an empathic sentence that you could say, or an empathic statement you could say to this person or this group?
Okay. So reflecting as well. Yeah.
But it seemed like, you had to do all the cognitive steps first to get there.
Yeah. Fascinating. And it seems like a very budget way, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you're aware of the paper of Levinson and Ruth.
No.
He did one on empathetic. I haven't posted it, but he did one on empathic accuracy. He called it the neural wait, it's 1 second. Empathy, a psychological substrate. Robert Levinson and Anna Ruth, you would call her Ruth in Germany. So Ruth, I don't know how you pronounce it in English. It's a German name. And what they did, Levinson and Ruth, they taped sessions from counseling sessions. So they had couple counseling sessions, and they videotaped it, and it's from 1992, so it must have been VHS tapes. And so they and while they were taping these, the couple, both man and wife, they had some marriage troubles, and they were both having these kind of joysticks where they indicated how they felt from a scale of 1, not aggravated, to very relaxed, to 10, very aggravated. And they, while they were discussing their marriage problems, they were controlling their emotions on the joystick. And then later on, Levinson and Ruth, they used this video material with the underlying online emotional scores, and showed that to observers. And they themselves had to judge what the people felt they were watching in this videotape.
Okay.
Which is, of course, it seems to be like the same. They didn't use it for training; they used it for research, to research how accurate people are when they how accurate they can perceive emotions in other people. But it's the same approach. You can also use it for training, but to get that kind of video material is, of course, a lot more costly and than the one that you just introduced with the photos. That seems to be like a very good budget. I mean, you're all on a budget in some way, and I think that's a very good, nice paper. Thank you very much.
Just a couple of reflections on that. One thing that comes up is Simon Baron-Cohen has a test. When you first said audio, that's what I was thinking of, is that you hear someone speaking and you guess the emotions that they're having. Like they have a empathy in the eye test, so you can read the emotions in the eyes and the face. And they have a version of the test for the audio, so you hear the audio and what is you're guessing the emotions. So, but this is very different than that. There is also what what it struck was the training I was just looking at from Helen Reese for doctors, that they actually do have a test of, I think it's the skin galvanance. They're measuring, and they can actually, they were showing a patient and a doctor, and the synchronization of the skin galvans, or was it actually the heart rate? It might have been. They were actually measuring both, so they could see that in an empathic dialogue, that when the doctor and patient were empathic, that there was a correlation. You could see the correlation. That was another thing that was coming to mind. The other was, I could imagine in an exercise like this, you look at the photograph and that you use empathic listening, like with the Emaco approach, right? That you actually bring in the level of empathic listening to have the dialogue. That it's not just a questioning of the experience or the thoughts, but that they share it with someone else who then reflects back what they're understanding. So you kind of add that reflective quality to it, and even could add like a role play, like, you know, take on the role of one party and the other, and that you actually kind of act out something within the photo. So that they just kind of build, those are kind of things that were coming up for me.
What you mentioning, the Emaco?
The Emaco, that's something Gertie does with relationships. It's using empathic listening, reflective listening within relationships. She could probably.
Could you maybe type it? I'm not
like
sure.
Image, it's spelled like image, just with an O instead of an E. Emaco.
Oh.
I was going to talk a little bit about it anyway.
Oh, do you want to go next then?
Right, exactly. That's it. Whoever typed that, Emaco.
Evan did it. I can imagine it now. Thank you.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Did you want to add anything?
That was just it. I guess we could move on, just in terms of if you wanted to share. You said you wanted to share a paper and it was talking about the Emaco, so that seemed like a good transition to for you.
I was gonna bring up only briefly the paper I mentioned earlier about compassion, mindfulness, meditation, and empathy. It's called Compassion Training Alters Altruism and Neural Responses to Suffering. It's authored by a PhD student called Helen Wang, and I'm going to upload it once we're done here. What they did is they did an experiment with 40 or 50 people. They meditated for 30 minutes a day for 2 weeks only. And after 2 weeks, they did some brain imaging, and they did some exercises with them to test whether their compassion has increased. It had something to do with financial distribution, like they were asked to give money to someone in need, and don't quote me on this because I would have to go back to the details. But after the compassion training, they were more willing to give more, or to just be more mindful of the suffering of others. And that was by means of loving kindness meditation, where people do a half-an-hour meditation where they first send compassion to themselves, or loving kindness to themselves, then to someone they love, then to someone they feel neutral about, and ultimately to someone they feel resentful about or have negative emotions for. And just that continuous meditating or sending loving kindness to people had an effect that was measurable. They did some kind of brain scanning, that there was a measurable effect of increased compassion, neural responses to suffering. But I'll upload it.
Oh, it is already uploaded, I think. If Wang Fox et al. At 2013.
I didn't see it. Oh, that might be it.
Isn't it? Helen Wang?
That's it. It's already up. Okay. Yeah. So then that is already up, yeah. And the other thing I was going to talk about was just a brief summary of Emaco therapy, which is couples therapy basically, but can be utilized between any other dyad or even triad or in groups. It doesn't really matter. Where you just empathically reflect back what you hear the other person say, so you're forced to really pay attention. You can't just tune out. You have to really pay attention, and the way people sit is they sit face to face. Like in usual couples therapy, the couple faces the therapist, but in Imago therapy, the couple faces each other and talks to each other and is prompted to reflect back what they're hearing. And I think Harville Hendrix, who's the originator or the creator of that particular technique, what he had in mind was to encourage each participant to talk more about their backgrounds, that the couple wouldn't just keep pointing to each other about what they did or didn't do, which, by the way, is not permitted anyway. The couple is being coached to express their feelings from a subjective point of view. Like, you're not allowed to blame or to criticize your partner, but to only speak about your own feelings. Rather than saying, you didn't do the dishes, you would say, I get very anxious when I see that there's dishes in the sink because I'm strapped for time. You make it about yourself. You don't speak about what everybody else isn't doing, but you speak about your own feelings. And that's what keeps you safe. You're not triggering each other. And the bigger picture behind it is often that those triggers that everybody has stem not from that particular relationship, like your husband or your wife is not causing a particular hurt in you, but you brought that hurt already to the relationship once you got married or started dating or whatever. And you are then encouraged to talk about, it's usually the family of origin, where there were certain relational patterns present, where certain needs were not fulfilled, and then you bring that into your intimate relationships. Like maybe in your family of origin, nobody paid attention to you, so now you go into your marriage and you expect your partner to always pay attention to you because that's what you didn't get from your family of origin. And once people learn that about each other, oh wait, so this is how you grew up, this is what you've missed out on, they develop an empathy for each other that makes it bigger than just, oh, you are not who I want you to be. And that's really what creates the empathic framework, that you see the whole person and their past experiences, and not just this particular thing of, oh, you forgot my birthday or whatever. And that, I think, is a really important contribution. I mean, obviously, Harville Hendrix took ideas and research from many, many, many thinkers before him, but he synthesized it in a way that's really useful for any kind of empathic training, I think. And there is one article I'm thinking about that I can upload when we're done.
Well, I find the process, the empathic listening, one of the most effective, easiest methods for fostering empathy in small groups. In terms of relationships, with my partner Joan, we use the empathic listening process, and also we'll say, okay, you have half an hour just to be heard, and then the other reflects back. Like you get 20 minutes, half an hour just for yourself to share, and I find it's very effective. And as well as doing empathy circles with small groups, like 4 or 5 people at the most, to be one of the best methods for kind of just practicing over and over and over again the listening. So
yeah, thank you for reminding or for pointing out the time frame, because that way, because you get so much time to explain where you're coming from, there isn't that bang, 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 that reactive behavior of, but this is what I think, or this is what I think. That's a very important point.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you have to be careful. I totally agree that this is very useful for any kind of small group work or couples work or people who have very close relationships. And it's even very useful for, say, workplace dynamics where you start listening to each other. But once it goes into the professional realm, I think you can't go exploring, past relationships or your family of origin or something like that. I think you have to be very aware of how much or how deep you can go in what setting.
That's a very good point.
Because I mean, you work at the workplace a lot, right? That's what I heard you say, Sasha.
Yeah, well, I do that, and it is of course a big issue that people drag their private lives into the workplace, but you're not really too free to speak about that at the workplace. And so well, I mean, in a coaching setting, these kinds of things can be addressed when you do a one-on-one coaching, but of course in a training, in a public training, that's going to be hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one-on-one, that makes sense. It's more private then, yeah.
Okay. Well, we're at an hour and a half. I can go for another half an hour. Does that work for others, or how's your time schedule? I want to keep us on track here.
Yeah,
We want to hear from Sasha. Okay.
Yeah. So this was great. Thank you so much for this conversation. Sorry I have to go, but I have another obligation.
Sure.
Okay, no problem. We'll be here next week. Next week we're doing the discussion, continuing our how do we create actual lessons, like discussion about. You're welcome to attend that. Or in 2 weeks we continue the literature review. And also on that same page, the second page, I put like a feedback. I like, I wish, what if. If you could write some comments about what did you like about this meeting. What do you wish for, and what if? Just as a way of kind of hearing where everyone is, and anything we can do to refine or improve the process.
Okay.
So, okay. Well, great. It was so great to have you take part, Dorothy.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Gertie. Bye, Sasha.
Bye.
Thank you, Dorothy. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Okay, shall we continue? We can hear your paper. Do you want to share, Sasha?
No, that's going to be embarrassing. I don't think I have a paper to share.
Just one that you added to the site?
Well, truthfully, I've been reading 2 papers in the last week. I was still at Zaki's paper because I felt that it is so rich in sources that I took the time to actually check all the sources that he's citing, and then I read Sarah Conrad's paper, which I haven't uploaded them. I have a look if it's on there.
How about the Zaki one? Which one is that?
Still the 2014.
Okay.
2014.
Would you share that one? Is that the one, Empathy and I thought that was a great paper, great...
Yeah, I mean, Gertie, have you read it, the paper? I think it's a very, very, well, in a way, it's a very, very motivated paper. I think Jamal Zaki is attempting to do, I think he wanted to write a great paper. I think he wanted to enter the ranks of people who majorly contributed to the empathy discussion, and in my humble opinion, he actually did the job, and he did a very he didn't present anything new, but he really pooled together all the different approaches to empathy, and he gathered a lot of evidence from different sources that empathy is not only an automatic process, but that empathy depends very much on motivation. And
I added the link in the chat window, Gertie, if you want to see it.
Yes, I just pulled it up.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, Sasha.
So I think he's looking on empathy more, not so much from your field, Gertie, because I think that empathy is very important from in the Rogerian tradition that is out of the discussion. He's coming from the neurological, psychological area, not so much from psychotherapy. And he is picking up on the on the Preston and the Wall front, so to speak, on people who, with their PAM model, perception action model, they were basically postulating that empathy is, in a way, or what Damasio was doing, and that empathy basically is an automatic process that happens in different layers in our brain. And basically it happens automatically, and there's not so much we can do about that, which is also an approach that the altruism, the empathy altruism hypothesis section also kind of proposes, Batson and Koch and Davidio and to name a few, that we perceive somebody suffering, and actually there's a very good chance that we come into action to help that person. From empathic concern comes pro-social action, and many of them view it as kind of an automatic process. Now Zaki gives a lot of examples that empathy needs to be motivated as well. If you do not have the proper motivation, then you just do not act. No? And he gathers quite a lot of evidence. Some of the papers he is citing I've read. Most of the papers he's citing, I screened the abstracts. Some of the references seem to be a little far-fetched. Maybe he was a little over-ambitious to gather evidence for his theory. Maybe he read it he has probably most likely a much better understanding, and if you just look at the sheer size of papers he's citing, I think alone it's incredible. It must be around 200, 300, 400 references he's giving, so it's enormous the kind of work he put into there. And he has some very convincing arguments that empathy, that we have, it is functioning in two ways. When we are motivated to be empathic, to perceive empathic, to perceive empathy and to express empathy, that also controls the automatic processes, which is something that he tries to prove, that the more we try to be empathic, the more we channel our empathic abilities in our brain. And he also gives good evidence that, for example, the many authors like Eisenberg and others, and I think also Davis, they perceived, for example, a difference in empathic accuracy between men and women. And he cites some nice studies that if you offer men money to be empathic, they can do that as good as women. They just need to be, they just need that incentive. And because he said that to be empathic is a role model that women kind of have inherited, so they got the motivation to be empathic from role models. Whereas in some Western societies, the role models are for men to be more analytical and maybe more cold-blooded. And I like this evidence very much because I do also a lot of cross-cultural trainings, and I work a lot with Indians. And in India, I've never seen a big difference between men and women concerning empathic acting. So men among men in India can be very empathic. The thing between the genders, that's a different story. But just men on men can be very empathic in India, and women on women can be very empathic. So I found that very interesting. And he also has boundless evidence how empathy is a motivational thing as well, which I think is very good news for empathy training. According to him, an empathy training might be more a motivational training than anything else. Which, so if you properly motivate people to be empathic, most people, except the ones who are scarred by traumatic experiences, or the ones who really have some disorders or some development issues, empathic development issues, like people with autism or psychopathic people suffering from psychopathic disorders. Save them. Everybody has it in him or herself to be empathic. You just have to create a culture of empathy, and people will. That's probably all it takes to motivate people to be empathic.
Mm-hmm.
That is an incredibly interesting angle. So, what would be the I don't know if he goes into that. Like, what's the incentive to try to develop empathy? If when you say earlier, sometimes you offer people money, and that in itself can be an incentive. But what would be the outcome, basically? In that example, it would be just simply more financial reward.
Mm-hmm.
But that incentive could be anything. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I was saying yes. The incentive could be anything. Some people, I mean, reward-oriented people will have to see some reward. What's in it for me if I'm empathetic? Then they will start to become empathic. And the other thing is when a culture of empathy is created. You take any given organizational culture, and the leader of that culture makes sure that everybody understands that she wants everybody to be empathic, then that in itself will be a value. And when empathy becomes a value, people will feel will have that incentive. They will have the role model to be empathic, and they also will feel some pressure. Some people need incentive, some other people will need a little more pressure to behave according to the role, and that will motivate them to. And I think with most people there's a natural tendency to actually go with the flow, to actually adhere to values, to group values, because I mean that is a group can only exist if a group has joint values, and values are often instilled in a group by the group founder, the group leader. So it's if the group leader is an empathic person, that kind of value will dribble down into the group and influence everybody.
It would be really good to see the different motivations then, like really to have, like a model of what all those different motivations are. Like I've thought of like a school, for example, doing a design project in a school, like how might we create a more empathic school culture? I mean, this is a small, scope. And then that it becomes that there's an agreement, like an intention, that we do want a more empathic school culture, and so there's like a social agreement for it. So it's like there's the things that will build an empathic way, kind of to build the support. There's needing like this social support for creating that empathic way of being, and one is if we all agree to it, and you say, oh, we've all agreed that we want this, and then that's like one motivation, right? That's one, like I want it because we all agreed to it, so that's one. another approach was the benefits. Like I did a project on what are the benefits of empathy and really pulling together all the benefits. So it seems like that's a motivation too. It's like, oh, here's all these benefits, well-being, healing for, emotional problems, healing for conflict, and empathy is a gateway for creativity and innovation, for example. So those are some of the major benefits. So really going out there and laying out, here's all the benefits that you get, and then other motivations too, like and it seems like one of the parts is, I know he says it's just create the motivations. I think you still need the skills. I guess I kind of see the empathy as the metaphor that we have the capacity, like our muscles, to for action and the empathic muscles. But if we have all kinds of I had done a mud bath, right? And in the mud bath, they pile all this mud on you, and you're in this tub with all this mud, and you can hardly move in this hot tub of mud. And I kind of see that metaphorically. You have all those blocks to empathy, like the mud. You can remove them, but then you can still have the muscle atrophy, right? You still got to practice, wire those neurons, and then the motivation is like, why are you going to be doing the exercises, right? It's like a motivation. If you don't have any motivation to do the exercises, you're not going to do it. So there's a whole constellation of how do we create this culture of empathy or an empathic way of being. And it seems like there's all these different components to it, and to really break down the motivations, I think it would be really great to have that kind of systematically broken down. Like, how do we motivate people? Because I see that as a real problem. People aren't motivated. Like the society says, you're in it for yourself. There's constant messages that you're on your own. You have to take care of yourself. So there's constant motivations in the other direction to shut down your empathy.
And sorry, Gertie.
Yeah, I think what you both said about, well, maybe first we'll have to pay them in order to make the effort, or whatever it is, to kind of dangle that carrot in front of people. I think you have to developmentally meet people where they are, right? If a society or a group or whoever isn't ready to just try to develop empathy for the greater good of everyone, but there's at a point where it's more about, for me, what's in it for me first, then that's what you have to do. If you have to meet them where they are, and if they're at a point of, well, if I'm not getting anything out of it, why should I do it? Then that's what you have to work with, and that's why such a list of incentives or a step-by-step guide of how to develop real empathy, right, is actually a brilliant idea.
It is, and you forgot one which might be interesting for high school students, that there have been some papers out there that empathy makes sexy, and I read a nice study that... Sorry, have you also read that, Gertie?
No.
No, they were judging different. They had this. I don't know if it's women or men. I think it was women. That women have a mate preference. No, a preference for. They prefer mates that are empathic over good looks or a social status. So there's actually a preference for, and most men would also prefer women who are empathic. So that could also be an incentive. You become empathic, and people will automatically perceive you as more attractive. Besides the outward looks or social status or economic power or whatever.
Yeah.
That's also a great incentive. I can say
You're going to the heart of it, the sex appeal.
Well,
like all the marketing, right? The marketing is all about sex appeal.
After all, everybody is a kind of, a sexual being. So that is something that drives people. I mean, that still, even in 2016, there's still some procreation happening around the world. Not much anymore, but
Not much anymore. But people still are having sex. But I think that's a great point, that people will look for a more empathic partner, and that quality becomes more and more important, and it goes beyond looks or finances or whatever people's criteria may be. Yeah.
And you made a very good point, Gertie, that I think it does make a difference whether people are planning, are sleeping with each other because they're planning to start a family. Because if you have in mind, I want to start a family, well, it's a feeling. I haven't done any research on that, just my personal research, that once you become serious about having your own family, you do look for different qualities in your partners. And that might also be why empathy is a bit on the decline. That's the second paper I read from Sarah Conrad. She viewed that empathy is on the decline in college students for the last 30 years. And that what you just mentioned might actually be a reason, because people are starting family life later and later and are less serious about having a family, that they are not that much looking for empathy in a partner anymore. Because truthfully, if you have children, you want the other parent, to be empathic, isn't it? For the sake of the children. I think there might be an instinct in every one of us that we feel that empathy is good for the children. And after all, from a evolutionary point of view, if we adopt that point of view, empathy has been the success story in in rearing children. And
yeah,
like with the relationships, the Imago is like you're wanting a stable, deep, supportive relationship, and that would be like a motivation for learning empathy. And then you also need the tool set of how do you foster that. And I think that's where the Imago is like a tool set, very clear step-by-step instructions and practices that you can do to deepen that relationship.
Yeah, exactly. But that would be a great marketing seller. Develop more empathy so you can get laid.
I think that's
millions of hits.
I think, I think in a way, there's so many. I mean, we live basically in two societies. We have the highly sexual people who are highly sexual active, and we have a lot of people who are kind of left out in the race, who think in a way that what they can offer to the game is not that much in question. I just read an article in German, a paper in Spiegel Online about that in Germany, quite a lot of people haven't had sex, although they're in the late 20s, because in a way they feel left out of society. And for them, having an understanding that being an empathic personality, they can offer so much to the table, and it is not just being eloquent, and it's not just being good looking, but being empathic can give them a whole new level of self-consciousness, of self-respect, and of forwardness in a way,
I just had an idea of empathy circles for singles. It's like practice your empathy, develop your deep relationships, and it's the foundation for great sex. And it's, in fact, when I think about why I got into the empathy work, I think about my deep relationships, having deep emotional, sexual relationships I really felt was based on empathy. It was like that deep attunement to the subtleties of felt experience, and that integration that happens with like a deep empathic interaction. I mean, it's just like a high point of meaning in life, and growth. So I think that's really a great motivator, to really kind of expand on that.
Yeah, that's the ultimate intimacy, right?
Yeah. And it's also good for keeping relationships going, because after all, if you're not empathic, it will get boring quite soon. So empathy also may not just be for starting the relationship, for dating, but also for keeping it alive over the years, on the long run.
There's a book to be written.
I think there's some lessons, some trainings to be created around this. That's next week. Our training lesson might be where we go.
The basic instinctual motivators of human psyche. Sex and drugs, rock and roll.
Well, okay. Well, I'm just concerned about the time frame here. We've gone for about 2 hours now for our other group, and I have to go in about 5 or so minutes. One thing on our document, on the second page, I put for the feedback. I thought maybe we could take a few minutes just to write some feedback about the meeting. If you there you go to the second page. This is the third page, actually page 3, for feedback. It's like I like, I wish, what if. So if we just take just write a sentence of what did you like about the meeting, our lit review, what do you wish for, and what if. Just as a way of trying to get some feedback. And let's take maybe about 3 or 4 minutes to write that out, and we'll share it and then close with that.
Okay. So can we work on that at the same time, or?
Yeah, we should be able to work on it, write it at the same time. It's
okay. Wow, funny.
Okay, are we ready?
Yep.
Okay. So what I like is meeting with others that are highly experienced and committed. Like you've all really delved into this, and have thought deeply about it, and I really enjoy that, to kind of get into the nuances. There's something of, yeah, and I like the deep dive into the nature of empathy and coming at it from a lot of different angles. Like, I really feel this was very, very rich. That was mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Pretty, do you want to share?
Yeah. Cross-fertilization, like sort of the building on each other's ideas and thoughts, and Sasha introduced one thought, and then Ed chimed in with your ideas, and then I had another thought, and then you guys built on it. It was very creative and really very engaging and enlivening. I love that.
Yeah, I had that same impression. I like the free flow of ideas, and I also like that we were able to share laughter, which is positive empathy is something which should be much more highlighted, because empathy, for many, empathy is only the sharing of rather blue emotions, to put it that way. But empathy is also the light emotions, and the free sharing of that is so important.
Mm-hmm.
I like that, and I like the inspiration I got for further reading. I liked, learning about Emaco. I liked learning about Lens and his photo voice, and connecting the different dots. Very fascinating.
Okay,
Yeah.
then we'll. Oh, sorry. Was there more?
We were laughing even though we're all German.
Well, I mean, it's a basic human thing that transcends nationality, right?
So, in terms of, I wish we could meet more often and more intensely. Like I really like. I find this very productive, and so I wish we could do it more often. And there's another part I wish is somehow for taking what we learn to really capture it and kind of build on it in some kind of a structured, systematic way, so we can really produce something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I wish that, because this is my first meeting, I wish there would be just like a primer for people who do this for the first time, to know what's going to happen the first time around, or what we're doing, meaning that we're going to introduce articles, because I hadn't really thought about it, and I was totally overwhelmed by reading the webpage because there's so much. It's like, it's very comprehensive, but it's extremely overwhelming when you first start reading about it, because you feel like, I don't know anything about all this.
I wish, I also wish we do that more often, and I wish I had more time last week to actually upload paper. I have to admit that I got a bit lost last week, and then I had to go to the dentist, and he ruined everything. And so, yeah. And I also I wish more time, because I also feel that something very valuable can come out of this. Something big, maybe, huh?
Mm-hmm. Okay, mine is, what if we keep working on this, keep finding ways to be more effective, as well as create some spin-offs. Maybe we could have a second group that has more time, and create like some other time slots and some other projects. We have our training lessons one next week, but maybe we could even expand that. I also think, yeah, that there's a lot of potential here, and that we can connect with more people within the field too. I'm going to add that too.
Mm-hmm.
That's mine. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the same thing. Create spin-off projects, whether it's write a book together or create a course about motivation and empathy or dating and empathy or long-term relationships and empathy. Any of what we've addressed today.
I'm just curious what can come out of this. I really enjoy the sessions, and I do feel that, you know, there's something is brewing. So what exactly comes out of this fertilization process will be seen. But what I really enjoy is the incremental approach. That every session I learn something new, which is very good because you're not working for some big thing in the future. But every second you learn something new, which I like very much.
Yep, just enjoy the moment.
Okay, well, I added that last comment to your I enjoy the meetings and the incremental approach. I learned something new, so I added that as a to your likes. That's good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to send this out to everyone. I'll put it on the page. We have a page, and this video goes there for anyone that wants to watch. So I'm going to stop the